afternoon, everybody. Welcome back here on the stage in Zurich, which is hosted by the ETH Zurich. We have a lot of discussions today about AI and education. Our next input here on stage will be about generative artificial intelligence and well-being in higher education. And our speaker is Beatrix Busse. She is professor of English Linguistics and Vice-Rector for Teaching Studies at the University of Cologne. Additionally, Professor Busse is also Chief Development Officer at the European University of Well-Being. This is an European University Alliance that unites 11 universities working together on the subject of well-being. After the input, we will have the possibility to ask questions directly. So if you have questions, please scan the QR code and write us your questions in the chat. And welcome, Beatrix Busse here in Zurich.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. That was too fast. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for staying. It's an honor to speak here, and thanks very much to the organizers for hosting us. I think it's a very great event. Thanks a lot. Now, I could sing, "Imagine there's no heaven." Of course, I won't do this now. I just want you to relax a bit and just imagine we were to link generative AI with a holistic concept and approach to well-being. Our world, we've heard a lot about our world already. You know, this is a rather, almost conventional way of describing what's going on in our world, the VUCA world, the BANI world. I'm not going to repeat all of this, the geopolitical tensions we live in, for example, or what we just see, what's happening in the US, which is, for somebody who is in English linguistics, just almost unbearable. As you can imagine, that's our situation right now. Anxious, nonlinear, complex, uncertain. I think these are the adjectives we would use. Coming to AI and the technologies that we are currently faced with, this is from the Future Today Institute, then labeled still in 2024 that way, where Amy Webb talks about a technological supercycle where, you know, in addition to AI, other technologies are working as well, the ecosystem of interconnectedness or biotechnology. So it's not just AI we should actually be dealing with, but other technologies as well. Now, in her latest report, she has said, and I will just read this out, you have a look at her future report. You know, we struggle to adapt to change occurring faster than our ability to process it. The gap between leaders and laggards will widen dramatically, not over decades, but months. And I do think this holds true for higher education and universities as well. I'll sort of overdo things a bit to raise our awareness again. Perhaps this is also some kind of summary of what we've heard today in the great talks. Current developments in also AI and generative AI, we're moving towards agentic AI systems, so agents will probably take over very soon. Reasoning models, generative AI and search engines, new interfaces also related to how they work with data. This is happening at the moment, and we are still thinking about how we train and educate our fellow colleagues in just basic AI competencies. So these are the tensions we live in. Now, if we think in terms of well-being, I'm going to define well-being in a minute, and generative AI. So AI is not a theoretical debate anymore or a construct, but a material fact. It's not new. AI research has existed for quite some time, and there's both enthusiasm and skepticism. We know this. So questions also, who sets the norms of what we are going to do, of what we are going to, educate and train with regard to competencies, who has power in all dimensions of what we are doing, and also what needs to be given for AI to support well-being. needs, I will argue this, an extended interdisciplinary dialogue and trust, and a clear commitment to and focus on facts. So what is at stake, I think, for universities is their role and their meanings to create futures, because AI is a fundamental transformation which affects how knowledge is produced. That's crucial to understand, and that strikes at the very core of higher education's purpose or university's purpose and identity: learning, research, and service to society. So we have to act. What does that mean, a well-being agenda? I'm not talking about wellness here, just to say that, to start off with this. I'm referring to this definition. Yes, I can see some smiling. I've heard this criticism before. Is this all about wellness now? No, it's not. It's actually a new discipline, the well-being discipline, done by very acclaimed scholars such as Richard Layard and Jan-Emmanuel Deneuve. Well-being defines how you feel about your life, how satisfied you are, your inner subjective state. This is how they define it, not just working on GDP, but also health, your working conditions, your community feel, how you are educated and trained, although education doesn't play such a role in their approach. And I would like to add to this eudaimonia, that is, how we all find life with a purpose. So eventually, I would like to stress, we should think about how do we want to live in the future, because I take it that human beings will still be here on this earth, in addition to more than human species. I'll come back to this. Now, how I'm influenced by this through, you've just heard this, the European University for Wellbeing, this consortium of 11 European universities, which is led by the University of Cologne. I have the fortune of leading this huge endeavor. And our focus is nothing more, nothing less, to help create a world in which individual, societal, environmental well-being are in synergy, in which we flourish and prosper together. No more, no less. Highly ambitious. And there's a specific approach to this. For example, we have analyzed what we are currently doing in these 11 universities and have found out, and there you see that well-being is not about wellness, not just. We focus, for example, on thematic arenas like health and well-being, social equality and well-being, environmental change, culture and multilingualism, and teacher education. And you can immediately see this more holistic approach to well-being then might also affect how we approach AI, and why I think a well-being agenda would help us as a corrective to decide how we go about the force of generative AI as such. Now, I'd like to quote Kate Crawford here. You've probably seen this before. AI is not just scientific or technological, but both embodied and material, made from natural resources, fuel, human labor, infrastructures. So it's not just technological, it's critically and deeply ideological, which means it affects our ecosystem in general. Keep that in mind as well. Now, in order to show why I think that a holistic approach to connecting well-being and AI is important, I'd like to show a number of things. That is how we could approach generative AI through perspectives, what is at stake with regard to education. I'd like to briefly dive into data, mental health issues, compliance issues, also the role of the humanities, as I'm from that field, and then planetary well-being as well. Let's start with some perspectives on AI. Now, I think we need to look at AI from those different perspectives, and together with Ingo Kleiber, who's here as well, we will be publishing this in a few months in a book on higher education and AI. We look at the different perspectives, applications of AI, for example, in education, in research. So there's a difference between AI research and research using AI. That's very important in administration and management, in communication and marketing. So how we deploy, operate, and manage AI, AI compliance, AI education, and AI in education, these are different perspectives. We should distinguish because that would help us to find, the right path between those perspectives. In addition then, what does that mean for AI and education? Learning about AI in other contexts, those domain-specific areas which we have already heard about today, learning how to use AI, learning to learn with AI, and then also the competencies that are important, how to assess whether learners can write with and without AI, and so on. And of course, there's also the interplay with educational technology. Very important to remember as well, and the way we are actually digitized, which I would claim differs at various universities. At least I can say that for the setting I'm in. So, access to different models and systems also, providing educators and learners with AI-powered tools, these are aspects we have to take into account with regard to the perspectives. Competencies. Now, we try at Cologne to really follow a holistic approach to competencies and to various fields, one of which is also now the AI competencies, which we have tried to define on the basis of, a scan of the literature. And of course, we have different other competencies and competencies fields which interact with AI. For example, other future skills, such as critical awareness, for example. And we deal with that in a very individualized way, almost following how you learn languages. So you follow your own path. For example, this is the one for post-digital education. For AI competencies and our well-being and also possible contradictions, it's important to stress that there is a need for building these competencies, including also the science-based way in which we should be doing this at our higher education institutions. And AI is, as we know, challenging uniquely so-called human domains, cognitively complex and creative tasks, but also enhancing those perhaps. We have to renegotiate, in this case, roles and expectations. Who is taking on which role, for example? And of course, we know, we've heard this as well, there are contradictory narratives and discourses. Is it an accelerator of growth, and do we actually need growth? What does that mean? And human productivity? Or is this also our chance to focus on meaningful things, which relates to the definition of well-being? Now, in our book, we took our responsibility and we thought we have to write down what we think, how to approach AI and higher education. So stay tuned, it will come out in August. On data, I'd like to mention a few things as well. We have seen in many presentations here how the models work, and that basically it's on the basis of probabilities and prediction of the next word token and so on. So we have to acknowledge a number of things. That the data that is available and being used is to be seen in relation to aspects of inclusion, exclusion, copyright, and so on, also ethical aspects, which are the core of science competencies as well. So how can we relate those? The quality of the data that is used, the objectiveness and reliability, and the validity of the data, as well as the value as such. Who has gained access? Who has coded this? And so on. This is important. This has a unique influence on our well-being and on how we also address, let's say, the different results from the prompts, for example, we get. This is important to know, and this is just a glimpse of what the data question is about. I like to quote the World Happiness Report from 2024 and also 2025. Now, we are no longer here in Germany, I should say, no longer among the first 20 of the happiest people. We are just not, for various reasons. Neither is the United States. That was before Trump. And so boomers and early generations are happier than Gen Xers. This is the first time that the elderly are happier than the young. And one of the reasons now that is also mentioned in the 2025 report is that such exchanges in communication due to social media and more recently large language models such as ChatGPT, they have an influence, this is what the World Happiness Report shows, on our happiness and well-being, the subjective feeling. And they even suggest here that having more meals together would increase this. I've just mentioned this in passing. So how do we deal with this? Social media and so on, this has been addressed in some of the talks yesterday. I was in Berlin as well, and now here as well. Uncertain about of their potential impact on their careers. So they feel excitement about this and also trust, and they use it, but at the same time, insecurities. This is the next generation, so we have a responsibility for the next generation. Compliance issues. The AI Act, data protection, copyright issues, labor laws, terms of services, also huge issues that sometimes, I mean, at least I'm very much concerned with these, and also they take a lot of my time to find out what can I do now to provide the university, for example, with skilling and training, and we've just developed a course that refers and is AI Act compliant. AI and security, safety and security issues as a key to well-being, multiple perspective. I'll just mention a few here. You can see truth and discourse, of course, with regard to deep fakes, civil rights, international relations. We know how youth, for example, and others are reliant on likes, for example, on social media, international relations and conflicts. We are, almost there in a kind of cyber war. We know this. Complex decisions have to be taken. Now, the humanities. I can't show you this. This was an AI-generated video of myself I did, just to show what can be done and why I just don't use my own clone to do certain things. What is the role of the humanities in all of this? Now, this goes at my core in linguistics and text production, because ChatGPT can create new texts. So what is my role? There was this very interesting article in the New Yorker discussing this, whether the humanities will survive generative AI. Go and read it. So which value do we have as humans? What is our core role? What are we struggling with regard to the various realities and also the narratives that are constructed? What is the USP of the humanities? Criticism, we are not actionable enough. At the same time, we know how to explain and how to create also this competence of imagination that is at the very core now of how we create our futures, I would say. Language, I have to say this as a linguist, creates and reflects realities. The language data we could collect and use. The language data in an AI world has impact. And Burnett says we currently have an encounter with a sibling. If we look at, the linguistic output of the new text and so on created. Now, artificial intelligence is an inter- transdisciplinary endeavor, and we have to ask ourselves some of those questions. To which norms do we align AI systems? What status do we grant them? So answering these questions, which are, I think, real-life questions right now, requires the competencies we need. Again, this relates also to planetary well-being and AI, because, as you see, it's not just scientific and technological. Now, we should, and that's the recommendation, co-create with AI tools, and soon AI agents are the norms. We should systematically consider and establish these processes and see how we do this, renegotiate existing roles as well as the role of AI within teams, and give purpose and decide and practice. I think that's very important. For students, I would like to stress that we have to give students work they want to do, because we can no longer make them, for example, in my field, just do the reading, but work towards understanding. in this process of using AI. So for me, it's not just an accumulation of facts, but understanding. Assessment, well, we know there are massive changes now. The answers of being, not only of knowing, I've said that. So we have created our human archive, which now AI is using, right? So, and we can still, I think, decide how we want to live in the future and what our world making will be. And this is the final slide. On the conditions, I think, with regard to structures, so we differentiate between structures and actors. I think with regard to structures, it's important that we have to take decisions now how to use Gen AI. An integrated AI strategy is very important where education finds its role. Resources and AI infrastructure is something we need to talk about. Very important, the AI governance at our higher education institutions. So who is actually in charge and who is the contact point? Rules, regulations, and AI ethics, our colleagues are asking for this. What are the rules? And I don't want to, prevent imagination and creativity, of course, but I think it's important. Talking about quality, AI quality would be important as well, and also information dissemination and communication. We've seen that information is just so important. For actors, the mindset and the culture for innovation and also leadership, I think that as researchers, as scientists and so on, this should be there, but we see resistance. The culture of cooperation and co-creation and sharing will be key, also with regard to resources and how we do this. The foresight and finally the competencies, which can be structured in various ways. I didn't go into full detail here because there are various ways of how to do this. This is not easy since we are in Switzerland and I'm a Roger Federer fan, or was. So he is called the dancer here in this image. So it's a kind of perfection we need. He says that effortless is a myth. So it's not easy, but we should still be doing it. Thank you very much for your attention.